making time to come to the event here. I appreciate there are a lot of folks here that are very busy. They are traveling from one part of the world to the other. Where'd Claudio go? He is here from Brazil, over there. I think he gets the prize for coming from the furthest distance, although he did stop over for a few months in New York City. But thank you all for making it here today. Wanted to go out of my way. Stephen, I don't believe is here, but Stephen Feinson, as well as my dean, there he is, Jonathan Capel, provided support for the event today, and I really appreciate that in terms of some of the food and cocktails and space. One of the things that I did want to point out before I forget, because I promise you I will forget, that we will be moving rooms tomorrow. So the event will not be in this space tomorrow, but will be 2 blocks that way. ASU has about 100,000 students, thousands of faculty and staff, and spaces at a premium at the university. And so we're always battling where we can find space and time for people. But with that said, I just wanted to remind you to please look on your agenda for the location. And again, we'll have some people over at the hotel to be able to walk you all over to that space in the morning. But once again, thank you for making it here today. A couple of housekeeping issues, and somebody's going to have to help me with this, but the bathrooms, I believe, are they outside this door? Elevators. That way? So they're right down this hallway, and there are restrooms straight down there. You will find a small little cafe down this walkway as well. If you're I believe we're a non-smoking campus. So unfortunately for the smokers in the room, there's not a space for you unless you leave our enormous campus, and it would probably take a shuttle ride for that. So I apologize if you need some gum or something like that. Don't hesitate to let me know. So a couple of issues that I wanted to chat about before we get started today is, one is I'm hoping to keep this event informal. I can tell the people who read the packet asking that it's going to be 100 degrees today. It's going to be a little bit warmer tomorrow. It's going to get warmer in here. Those of you that are familiar with Arizona are going to know that it gets warm, and so this time of year we try to make sure to emphasize to keep things rather informal. But that's not just in dress. What I'm really hoping is that we'll keep things informal to increase the amount of discussion that takes place. The last thing that I want to see here today is simply listening to folks talk or listen to talking heads up here. And I know sometimes this can be difficult for speakers, but I'm going to ask if you do have questions before the presentation is finished, don't hesitate to interrupt. And I know that can be sometimes troublesome for the speakers, but I want to make sure that there's as much dialogue as possible and that people feel comfortable speaking as much as they have an opportunity to do, so that we can share as much information as we can. If any of you, I've already heard from one person that they were having trouble with a flight due to some weather-related issues. If you have any flight problems that you come across, have any problems with your hotel, don't hesitate to let me know, and myself or one of the folks with the research center will assist you and make sure that those issues are taken care of as soon as they can be taken care of. And so if there's anything you need, don't hesitate to contact me, Melissa, Mercedes. You can raise your hand. There you go. And then Jonathan is in the back, as well as Haley is back there as well, who have helped out a ton to put on this event. So before I turn it over to Dean Capel, I wanted to talk briefly about a couple of the goals for the symposium that we're holding over the next day and a half. And our goals in some ways are very traditional, right? We want to be able to make sure and meet folks, introduce folks to one another who have some common areas of interest in which we can focus on what it is that we know, what's taking place now, and not waiting 3 to 5 years down the road when some of these things become published in one form or another. The other one is to share best practices in terms of innovations in violence prevention, contemporary research that's taking place in these areas. But the goal that I've adopted myself, and this sometimes can take a while to achieve. I wish that there was some measurable way for this to happen. But my real goal for this event, as well as similar events that we've held in the past that have worked out similarly, is to increase the relationships between the researchers and the practitioners and policymakers in this room, and as well as outside of this room. One of the goals of my career have been, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that is at lunch, is talking about creating sustainable, sort of cross-sectional learning organizations in which the folks in this room, whether you're with a research organization, whether you are with a NGO, whether you're with the government in one form, but is coming together and educating one another about what is taking place and what their needs are. One of the reasons why I've stayed at ASU for the last 20 years is its focus on two primary issues. And I firmly believe in two of the issues that President Crow has emphasized. One of them being social embeddedness and being embedded within the community. And that doesn't mean being embedded, I live in Scottsdale, that doesn't mean me being embedded in Scottsdale, Arizona, or in Phoenix, Arizona, or in Arizona at stake. Rather, what it means is being embedded within the communities that we work, live, and where others work and live. And working alongside individuals who are policymakers, people who have influence within the community, and working with them to understand what their needs are. We're interested not in research for research's sake. We have a lot of that does take place, basic research. But we're also interested in, through social embeddedness, is engaging in use-inspired research. And use-inspired research doesn't come from what is useful to me, Charlie Katz, and how is it going to get me published 5 times in the next year, 1 time in the next year, whatever it might be. But really what it is providing useful information to a variety of stakeholders. And that could mean information that's useful to the community. It can mean information that's useful for various policymakers and practitioners. But the idea is that there's some cross-pollination that takes place, that by being embedded within the community, we're learning what it is that actually needs to be known. And that is one of the goals of this forum, is that we can more clearly embed, or we can create some cultural expectations within communities for data-driven decisions. One of the things that I've heard from a number of you in this room, as well as outsiders, is how often decisions are made outside the purview of data and rational decision-making, right? Oftentimes decisions are made due to actors who know one another, various issues of politics, which can be both good and bad in terms of making sure that the public is getting what it is that they need. But regardless, one of the primary ways in which some issues can be handled, particularly when you're dealing with communities where there's a lot of problems with corruption, political nepotism, and other issues, is by increasing reliance on data to make decision making and using that as a force for change and good, and making evidence-based decisions rather than decisions based on other factors. And so that's really my goal, is really to try to embed a culture in which NGOs, governments, and other major stakeholders have expectations that data will be used to make decisions, and not simply discussion points. And so throughout the symposia, the issues that I would like to keep coming back to from this is thinking about what do we know about citizen security in the Caribbean and Latin America, right? What do we know? 2, what do we need to know? One of the problems with a lot of the work in the Caribbean and Latin America is that we think that we know more than we do. Oftentimes because of co-optation of literature from other nations without any sort of cultural specificity and contextualizing that work. I can't count how many times things have been, basically people have been helicoptered into a nation, they drop off a program from that nation. It could be from England, the US, Chuck Katz, right? It could be from Italy, Colombia. It gets exported to another nation, and we make some assumptions about it that it's going to be applicable in other areas. And we simply know that that's not the fact. It's not the case. And so what is it that we really know within a country-specific context, and what do we need to know? And then the real issue here is what infrastructure is required to get to that point where we can be learning more and where we'll have a better understanding of what some of the issues are. And so In other words, when I talk about what infrastructure is needed, I was recently speaking about some of the analytical capacity. I was speaking with some folks about the analytical capacity within some nations that are represented here. And one of the issues is how deep is a crime analyst pool in a nation, for example? How can the police be making data-driven decisions? How can an NGO be making data-driven decisions if they don't have anybody who can be performing analysis for them, right? That could be a real simple issue. Or it could be that there's simply no data available to them on particular issues. It could be that there's not a undergraduate curriculum that facilitates data-driven decision-making or policy-making that relies upon data. And so when we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about it in a very wide sense. What are the human resources that are available for it? What are the more analytical resources that are available, data resources that are available, human capital, financial resources, educational resources, but also there has to be a need for it. And what does it look like in terms of that demand, and how do we change the demand for information to be able to make data-driven decisions? So with that's my goal. I'm sure some of you have other goals that you would like to get out of this conference, but I'm going to keep revisiting some of these issues as the day goes on. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dean Capel. He is the dean over our college here at ASU with 4 units. It houses criminology, social work. I always call it recreation because I've been here so long. I know it has community resources and development, and public administration, along with 20+ research centers that are focused on collaborating with agencies and organizations around the globe to help them increase their research infrastructure.
Great. Thank you.